We're in Genesis 24. Abraham, well, in the previous chapter, Sarah has died. She was buried. Where was she buried? Cave of Machpelah. Now, Abraham knows he's getting older, and he wants to take care of something. What does he want to take care of? Okay, his son, Isaac. He wants to make sure that Isaac, number one, is married, not just so that he's just not hoping that his son gets married, but that the seed line is going to be carried through. And that being the case, whom does he want to make sure that he does not marry? Don't want to marry any of the Canaanites, because God's going to basically destroy the Canaanites because of all of their idolatry. They're basically destroying themselves. But he wants him to marry someone who is back from where they're from, over in Mesopotamia, of his family, basically. And so, whom does he send in order to obtain a wife, if you will, fetch a wife, for Isaac? Okay, his servant. His servant. And in fact, we find something interesting. He says, I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven. Now, I thought that's interesting, because some people, well, we get over the New Testament, it tells us, swear not at all, neither by heaven. So is that a contradiction? Is Abraham telling us to do something that's sinful? That is it okay to swear? In light of what Jesus says? Swear not at all. Any thought on that? Jesus said, swear not at all, neither by heaven nor by earth, and so on. But here we'll find, matter of fact, you will read in the book of Hebrews that because God could swear by no greater, he swore by himself. So what do you think we have here?
He was rebuking the misuse.
The misuse of it. He wants us, mean what you say. Let your yea be yea, your nay nay. Now, some people think it's wrong to swear, so that when they go to court, and if they are serving or have to get up and say something in court, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And they say, well, I can't swear. Well, that's not what our Lord is talking about. So now then, what they will do you swear or solemnly affirm? Well, that's a swearing. It's just a nickname for swearing. Clifton is right. The Jews were misusing this. They would say, you know what, if you swear by the altar, you don't have to keep the oath. But if you swear by the sacrifice, you have to keep it. So they came up with their rules, and so in order to be able to get away with something, they were manipulating their promises, because they didn't, I had my fingers crossed. You ever heard that? I had my fingers crossed. This, I had my back here, so it doesn't count. I don't have to keep that oath. Well, that's not true, and so it's not wrong to make an oath. I think we ought to be careful with them, but at the same time, it's not right to tell a lie, even if you haven't sworn, right? And so you don't have to put your hand on the Bible to swear, but you're legally bound if you swear in a court of law. If you lie and they catch you, that's perjury, and you can be fined or incarcerated because of that. But here we find then that Abraham wants the servant to put his hand under his thigh, which is saying this is making an oath, and you are to swear to the Lord that you will go and get a wife for Isaac, and you will bring her back here. Do not take Isaac back there. Why? Why does Abraham not want Isaac to go back there to find the wife? Anybody? I'm sorry? That's right. I mean, he may go back there, and you know what? I like it back here better than I like it here. He said, no, we're not going to go back. We're not going to go back over into our home country. Therefore, I want you to go and to bring her back. Now, the servant has a concern. before he swears, what does he tell Abraham? What if she will not come? Now you're asking me to swear to do something, and it may not be within my control to be able to do this. And so what does Abraham tell the servant if she doesn't want to come? Well, then you're clear. Well, okay, that I can go and I can do what I need to do if and I can full the. And so he says, unto thy seed will I give this land. He shall send his angel before thee. I find that interesting. That Abraham says that God will send his angel before thee. I see in this then the providential care. Maybe even we're getting into the miraculous here a little bit later on as we contemplate this about getting the wife for Isaac. But I see in this then that angels are at the disposal of God's commissioning. That is, whatever God wishes for an angel to do, they can do. Angels, I do believe, work behind the scenes and maybe through providence in some things of which we don't know. And so we have to leave it there, but we learn that they are ministering spirits unto those who are to be heirs of salvation. If you want to study more on angels, if you can find the book Systematic Theology, I think has been rewritten with a different title now. But Rex Turner Jr. gave a whole chapter on angelology, the study of angels. And it's an interesting study, but we can only know about angels what God has revealed. They're not appearing to us today and talking to us and things of that nature. So the servant then, he takes, according to verse 10 camels of the camels of his master and departed, for all the goods of his master were in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia unto the city of Nahor. This shows us the great confidence and that Abraham has in this servant, because he basically has turned everything over to him and says, all of my disposal, everything I have is at your disposal. That's a lot too, isn't it? Because Abraham was a very wealthy individual. And so what happens is, in a prayer that this servant, he's a very godly man, evidently, believes strongly in Jehovah, in the Lord. And what does he request of the Lord? He asked for a sign. And go ahead. Okay, and by the way, the camels kneel down, and I'm told that they can kneel only as a camel can kneel. That they all their knees, all four knees go the same way, kneel down in order to drink. And we have different camels. You have the dromedary camel. What's a dromedary camel? That's a one hump. The one hump camel. And then you have some with two humps. I don't know what you call them. But anyway, camels. I was eating, I guess, breakfast one morning in India. I don't know if Tim's ever seen this. And I was in a restaurant and going down the street, and there goes a camel. Not something I see in Senatobia generally. But I looked and I said, wow, there goes a camel. And so they still use camels in caravans and things of that nature, I suppose. And yeah, you can see some in Como, but I think they've been imported, haven't they? They didn't grow up there. But so, what sign does this servant say or ask the Lord? What is the gist of this sign? Right. Let it be that the one that I ask for a drink of water, that she will also then not only give me a drink of water, but she'll say, let me water your camels also. Let that be the one that the Lord has chosen. So now then, it's not so much the servant then that's choosing a wife for Isaac, but the Lord. I've heard this said before, You know the best time to get a divorce is before you marry, right? I think it does well for us to pray. Now, for some of us who've been married 50 years or more, it's a little late to start for selecting a wife, praying for it there. But you know what? It ought to be a prayer. We still pray for our marriages, do we not? And that, marriage takes three. And so God joins husband and wife together, so there's three in every scriptural marriage. But it's certainly good to pray prior to the marriage. I have an idea that you parents probably been praying for your children, probably maybe about every day of their lives, regarding the marriage and things of that, and that's good. But now that doesn't rule out our free will, right? In-laws still can become outlaws, I understand. But at any rate, but I find it interesting in verse 15, and it came to pass before he had done speaking. That's pretty quickly, isn't it? You remember, I guess maybe Clifton taught us the book of Daniel a long time ago. I think it was. And Daniel was praying, and before he finished his prayer, Gabriel was there. That's pretty swift, isn't it? That's how close we are then, I guess, to God. And so here he's praying, and before he's done speaking, behold, Rebekah came out, verses 15, and behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher on her shoulder. Now I have an idea she didn't have any idea she was going down there and was going to be introduced to someone who would, at least in near future, would be married. She's going down there for water. And so she doesn't know that she's fulfilling this man's prayer request, because it says, and the damsel was very fair to look upon. So she was beautiful. A virgin, and then you will notice it says, neither had any man known her. That sounds redundant, doesn't it? A virgin, and neither had any man known her. Until you understand that there are at least two Hebrew words that can be translated virgin. There is one word that is strictly a virgin, such as in Isaiah 7:14. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and shall bring forth a son. There's another word that is translated virgin sometimes, and sometimes it means just a young maiden. And so a young maiden is sometimes, so this is the word for the young maiden. That's why I believe you have the explanation. For whatever reason, the Holy Spirit didn't see the need of just using the word for strictly virgin, but it says she was a young maiden, and neither had she known any man, which shows she was a virgin. All right? So we're getting a little more introduced to that. And she went down to the well and filled her pitcher and came up, and the servant ran to meet her and said, let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of thy pitcher. Can't you just imagine the anticipation that perhaps was in his heart? Because he's prayed, and before he's done praying, he sees this young, beautiful lady come. Well, could this be the one? So he asked, and she said, drink, my Lord. Notice the word Lord is not capitalized. It doesn't mean deity. It's kind of like we say, sir. And she hastened and let down her pitcher upon her hand and gave him drink. And when she had done giving him drink, she said, I will draw water for thy camels also until they have done drink. Well, there's the one now. He realizes his prayer has been answered in a positive way. And so she hastens to do this, and the man wondering at her beheld his peace. He didn't make a big deal out of it, whether or not the Lord or Jehovah had made his journey prosperous or not. Well, when they finish drinking the water, the man took a golden earring and a half shekel weight and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold. Evidently, this is very nice gifts here. But he says, whose daughter art thou? He's inquiring. Okay, is this really the one? He's making sure of it. Tell me, I pray thee, is there room in thy father's house for us to lodge in? She explains who she is. Yes, she is of the right family. She's the daughter of Bethuel. She said, moreover unto him, we have both straw and provender enough and room to lodge in. Very hospitable. And the man did what? Verse 26. The man bowed down, and what does he do? He worships God. You see, he's not like the 9. You remember that were healed of the leprosy? There were 10 actually that were healed. And only 1 returned to give thanks, and he was a Samaritan. He is thankful. So he is seeing God's hand in this. And what lesson do you think we might learn from his actions here? Gratitude. Gratitude goes a long way. I was asked to speak to the teenagers at Polishing the Pulpit. My best piece of advice was the title of it. And I gave them 2 pieces of advice. But one of them was to be respectful. And then be grateful, be thankful. Learn to respect others. I said, I think that, and the other one actually was, but being respectful went with being gratitude, or gratitude in being respectful. The other one was having initiative to accomplish things. And don't get sidetracked by things and forget our opportunities of life. Now, the reason why I deal with some who come to the Memphis School of Preaching who sometimes don't have that initiative. I love what Peter Chin told us when he came. I'd never heard this. Jim was aware of it because he has dealt with horses all a great deal. But Peter Chin said, you've heard the saying that you can lead a horse to water, but what? You can't make him drink. But he said, but you know what? You can give him enough salt to make him thirsty. And Jim told me that was a reality, that people, that they can mix salt with their oats and things if they're not drinking enough water, and that'll make the horse to start drinking water. And so I guess I need to get some salt to mix in the oatmeal that the students up there are eating from time to time. Most of them have initiative, but some of them come there and they've not done much in their lives, and they just don't have much get up and go, and their whatever got up and go they had has got up and gone. And so some of them don't make it because of that. So I encourage them to have that initiative. Look at opportunities. What a great opportunity. But this man, he had initiative. He also is very grateful to God. He worships God. He's very reverent to God. And you know what? He realizes he is a servant. But you know what? He wants to be a good servant, doesn't he? And he says, notice in verse 20, and he said, blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham. He's just grateful to serve Abraham. They enjoy, and that's one thing I think we notice about the Eastern culture to a large degree, is they want to be your servant. I'll carry my bag. No, I'm your servant, they say. And also when we eat, you know what they want to do? They want to sit there and fan us while we're eating. I can get used to that. I haven't got Terry to do that yet. But she's throwing, she's fanning a few things every once. No, she's not doing that. So he's grateful, but now then, and the damsel ran and told them of her mother's house these things. And so she sees evidently this man's worshiping and all this jewelry that this man has given her, and money, something of worth, and this is not an average day then for her. Well, Rebecca has a brother. What's his name? Laban. All right, and he seems to have authority in that household, doesn't he? The eldest son. And so her brother Laban ran out unto the well. And it came to pass when he saw the earring and the bracelet upon his sister's hand, and when he had heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, Thus spake the man unto me, that he came unto the man, and behold, he stood by the camels at the well. So he comes out to where he is, and he invites him to come home. So he goes, and he's going to lodge there that night. They're going to feed him. They're taking care of all of his animals for him, and that's a very important thing to do. There was food set before him, and they said, Go ahead and eat. But what did he say first? Look at verse 33. I will not what? I will not eat until I have told mine errand. And he said, Speak on. What lesson do we learn from that? I think priority, diligence, and priority. In other words, he's not going to eat. He says, Listen, I've come on a very important mission. He takes his responsibility to heart. I'm not going to eat. No doubt he was hungry. He's been on a journey, and I welcome all this. But you know what? I've got to take care of this before I do anything else. And so until I have told mine errand, and he said, Speak on. So what he does, I'm not going to read all of this because we've already read, hopefully, what all of this was going to take place. And so he rehearses to him everything that we just talked about. So he goes over it in detail, and he tells about what he had said to the Lord and how that the Lord had responded. He says in verse 49, And now if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. And if not, tell me. Whichever way you go on this matter, you tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. So he can only take care of what he can do, right? There's another great lesson for us. Preachers and elders, and members, we can only do what we can do. We can't make somebody else do what we think they ought to do. We can pray about it, we can encourage, but we can only do what we can do, right? I can't make anybody, even Jesus didn't do that. And I think preachers sometimes get discouraged and want to quit because it seems like we're not doing any good. I preach on this and nothing. But you know what? My job is to preach on it, right? And I can't make people. And I went to Brother E.L. Whitaker. I preached, at the Coldwater congregation for 12 years. Clifton's been here longer than that now, right, Clifton? How many years you been here? A little over 15. I guessed at 15 the other day. We have preachers of long livers here, don't we? I preached here 10 years. Lenny preached, 12 years. Lenny 10 years, and then Clifton's been here over 15 years. But I went to Brother E.L. Whitaker. Y'all didn't know this, but I was in my 7th year at Coldwater, and I went to Brother E.L. Whitaker at the Night on the Road Church. I said, Brother Whitaker, I've been at Coldwater for 7 years. Can you tell me how I can stay 8? He said, Billy, you're going to have to learn that the Lord has to take care of some things. And I didn't know what he was talking about, and I didn't ask him to expand on that. But maybe he was getting the sense that I thought I had to do everything, that I had to change everybody, and I'm just discouraged with this. And so I've learned that lesson. I can only do what I can do, and that's all you can do, right? But I ought to do the best I can do. And that's my job. And that's what this servant is doing. You tell me what you decide, that I can either go to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing proceedeth from the Lord. We cannot speak unto thee bad or good. In other words, God's will be done in this. We want the Lord has made this decision then. He says, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife. as the Lord has spoken. Now, have you noticed somebody who was not addressed in this on that decision? Rebecca. Here's Rebecca over here. You think maybe she's heard this? Here's her brother say, you can have her. She might want to say, wait a minute. Well, the truth of the matter is they haven't ruled her out. If you go over to verses 57 and 58, you will see what he's doing is giving his permission, and then they're going to inquire of her. So she does have a voice in it. And when you get to verses 57 and 58, we'll just go over there and read that. And they said, we will call the damsel and inquire at her mouth. And they called Rebekah and said unto her, wilt thou go with this man? And she said, what? I will go. She sees God's hand in this as well, no doubt. And so he has spent the night there already when we come down to verse 57 and 58. And notice again in verse 53, and the servant brought forth jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. This is genuine. It's not trickery in any way. In other words, I believe what he's also doing is proving that his master is a very wealthy individual, that God has prospered him, and she's going to be taken care of. She is going to be prosperous. And her brother and her mother said, let the damsel abide with us a few days, and at least 10, and after that she shall go. Now, wait a minute. The servant, he's very diligent. And they're asking for 10 more days. And he said unto them, verse 56, hinder me not, seeing the Lord hath prospered my way, send me away that I may go to my master. In other words, do not hinder what God is doing. God is prospering us. We ought not then to procrastinate in this matter. 10 more days? No. We need to go back and we need to leave today. Well, that's when they said, we will call her. Who else goes with her? Her nurse. She has a nurse. And they send away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. So she has someone who's taking care. I don't think she's sickly. I think that she's like an attendant to her. And so, okay, she's got somebody she knows going with her, and she feels secure, and God is with her. So Rebekah arose and her damsel, and they rode upon the camels and followed the man, and the servant took Rebekah and went his way. So as now then they're coming, and they're coming back into Canaan's land, that Isaac came from the way of the well Lahairoi, for he dwelt in the south country, and Isaac went out to meditate. Another version may say to pray. So here he is in prayer, meditating, and as we think of it, it's not like we might think of meditating, but I think about meditating upon God's Word, Psalm 1, and in prayer. In the field at eventide, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, the camels were coming. Okay? By the way, we don't have any insight as to what Abraham has said to Isaac. But I have an idea he knew what was taking place. And he sees the camels coming, and Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, what did she do? Brother Richard Curry said she was smoking, because said she lit off the camel cigarette. Well, that's not what he's talking about. Okay, that's Richard Curry for you. He's very serious on things, and then all of a sudden he'd come out with this. And she said unto the servant, what man is that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it is my master. Isaac, in other words. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. Why would she do that? That was a sign of modesty in that day of wearing of the veil. And the servant told Isaac all things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into his mother's Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So, a very interesting chapter. There are some countries where marriages are still arranged, India being one of those countries. And according to the ones I've spoken to, they said even the divorce rate's still very low. Someone said that some Eastern country had said the difference between the marriages sometimes in America and in their country was, he said, it's like you have a kettle of water, and when you get married, it's piping hot, and then you set it off of the stove, off the eye, and it cools down. He said, ours is the other way. It's cool because they don't even know one another very well, and then it starts to boil as they continue on. That was his analogy of that. I've actually, Tim, you may have visited some weddings. Have you ever witnessed a wedding in India? I didn't know I was going to be a part of the wedding in India. I was in Kakinada, and Moses was marrying Rose. That's all I knew them by. And I just noticed that Rose was looking pretty sad the whole time. I mean, she was decked out in all this wedding garments and things, and he was nicely dressed, but she's looking sad. And I mentioned that to some of the Indian brethren there, and they said, "Oh, that's because she's leaving home." Said she's supposed to look that way, so that's a part of the tradition. I thought she didn't like Moses, is what I was thinking. But they asked me. They said, "Would you be a greeter?" And I said, "Sure." Now, to me, what's a greeter? Be at the door and welcome people in. Well, no, I'm sitting there at the front, and the brother got up and he said, "We will now hear from our brother from America." That's when I knew I was saying something. And so I got up and I greeted Moses and Rose and wished them well and talked a little bit about marriage. And that's all I knew to say off the top of just a moment. But at any rate, it was. But their marriage was prearranged by the families a long time ago. And I was told by some of them don't even know one another until about 2 weeks before the marriage, as far as the man and the woman. It's interesting. So here you have kind of not a prearranged, but an arranged marriage. But yet God's hand was involved in that as well. So the way that we do it sometimes is a matter of custom. But again, it's interesting. Well, Lord willing, we will pick up with chapter 25. We're going to read about the death of Abraham.